Hey there, YouTube flock. This is Siegs, and today we're talking about Keqing. If you're like me, since the start of Genshin Impact, you've really wanted to base your team around Keqing, but have found her skills and attack and everything to just be really lackluster. Well, luckily for us, we were blessed by grass. Yes, grass. Using the power of grass, we can aggravate our enemies and do lots of damage with Keqing. So let's dive in and see what makes our work-obsessed, god-loving, favorite fake-eared cat girl. Fake cat-eared girl. First, taking a look at Keqing's moveset, her basic attack string. Very simple. The fast 3 hits here is really good for proccing aggravate. These last few hits here take a long time to come out. Wouldn't recommend it, but sometimes just the 1, 2, 3 is good just to proc that aggravate attack really quickly. And of course, her signature charge attack has higher damage ratios compared to her regular attacks and is considered to be the superior of the options when going for normal attacks. However, it does have the downside of pushing enemies away from you and slowly stepping back. This is what has kept Keqing from doing consistent damage overall during her rotations, but now with the new rotation that I will show you in the team guide, you no longer have to do more than one charge attack, and even after you do, you teleport to them anyway, negating the distance that you lost from the charge attack. And finally, the all-important plunge attack. I'm not sure why people don't put this in their guides, but it looks something like this. Do your plunge attacks, everybody. Do your plunge attacks. So taking a look at the team here, this is the team I specifically put together and love how everything just works together so well. But of course, every one of these team members has a replacement and can be replaced by anybody of the same element. MC can be replaced with Kole, Sucrose can be replaced with Jean or Kazuha or another amino role, and Yai can be replaced with Fischl. Or if you're really hurting for a healer, you can also put Kuki up in here, but the damage will be significantly lower. So looking specifically at Keqing first, looking at the details on her, these are her stats. She has 2000 attack, her crit ratios are 78.7 and almost 229. Low energy recharge, but you don't really need it, and a tiny bit of elemental mastery I was lucky to get. Her talents are currently maxed, but when I did the first Spiral Abyss with, if it was 8, 8, and 13, this was maxed out because of constellations. Your Keqing doesn't need to have crowned talents. This is just my preference because I just love this unit, but if you have things at level 8 or 9, it should be roughly the same anyway. For weapons, her best in slot is the Primordial Jade Cutter or the Mist Splitter Reforged. Both are very good on her. Mist Splitter Reforged technically has more damage if you can get all 3 stacks, but getting all 3 stacks is a little troublesome and only affects about half your damage, where the Primordial Jade Cutter is only a few percentage points below the Mist Splitter in terms of raw damage, but is roughly the same overall and has a consistently high amount of damage overall. And you can also make use of those annoying HP rolls you get on your artifact sets. So talking specifically about the weapons, Primordial Jade Cutter gives you significantly more crit ratio, 44% crit as to the 44.1% crit damage. So double the crit ratio, but slightly less base attack. However, this passive allows you more attack overall compared to the Mist Splitter, but the Mist Splitter gives you elemental damage increase and 3 stacks, 8, 16, and 28 of elemental damage for each stack it gets. However, for Keqing, that would require doing E, recasting E, and doing an auto attack before alting to get all 3 stacks, which means that her initial E and E return plus auto attack will not get either of these. It'll get only the 8 actually, unless your alt isn't ready, in which case the rotation doesn't really work anyways, and therefore only half of the attacks you'll be doing with Keqing on field at the time will be buffed completely by this 28%. So for me, it's just easier to go Jade Cutter, and I actually do like the contrast and look of the green and purple. Just looks beautiful, especially if you got the moss fairy thing pets from the new event. Coming to artifact sets for this specific team, you're going to want to build Thundering Fury for both the increase in aggravate damage, increases it by 20%, and for the decrease or reduction in cooldown of her E ability. This way her rotation will be E into recasting of E with her ultimate, and then when you get out, maybe one quick charge attack into another E and E recast before swapping off. This makes her talent priorities a bit different than before, where you cast E twice in a rotation and her Q once. and maybe swinging 1 or 2 auto attacks here and there. So that makes her Q and E much more important to level up in comparison, in my opinion. But this team only works well together because of the other team members in it. So looking at MC here, MC could be replaced by Kali, but looking at specifically MC for what she does, or he, or whoever you chose, we have the Noblesse Noblesse set on Traveler. And this is giving your party members 20% increased attack. Since the Dendro damage is not significant, the new Dendro set isn't significantly good on MC, so don't have to worry about that. But Noblesse helps everyone, which is great. So Noblesse is good, it's our friend. Talents, just 8, 8, and 2. I don't know why this is 2, but you just need these at 8 and 8 because they don't do so much more damage than lower levels, but getting to 8 doesn't cost a significant amount. The Constellation 2 on MC is great. You can get it for free, and you can get it easily just by doing basic quests and finding those, what are those things called? Those Dendro Oculi, whatever you want to call it. And this will give sustained Dendro application throughout the entire rotation. What really makes this build tick is the weapon Sapwood Blade, the new craftable Dendro, the new craftable Sumeru 4-star weapon. When at Refinement 5, when you activate a Dendro reaction using this character, it'll drop a leaf, and when you pick up the leaf, it'll give 20% it'll give 120% elemental mastery to the character who picked it up for 12 seconds. This is a significant boost, and if you can pick it up with Keqing, then she'll be doing significantly more damage with her aggravates. For Keqing, when it comes to artifact substats, you want to just try to get crit rate and crit damage as much as you can, plus attack percent or base attack is fine too, I suppose. Some energy recharge, but you really don't need a lot with Keqing because such a low burst cost of 40, and some elemental mastery would be good if you can get it, but don't worry too much if you can't. And if you happen to be using the Jade Cutter, then the HP rolls aren't the worst, but of course attack is always better. When it comes to the Sands, attack or EM is good depending on your substats. I just am choosing attack because I feel that 300 to 400 EM is usually considered the soft cap when it comes to EM, and you can hit that if you include both MC's Sapwood Blade and Sucrose's passing of EM from their passive talents. Next, we have Sucrose. Sucrose, another really important player in this team. I happen to have the prototype Amber on Sucrose because this team has no healer or survivability. Even if you're using quick swaps and ulting and dodging and stuff, you're going to take damage here and there, and that little bit of HP recovery with every burst rotation and energy recharge that it grants you is great. But if you feel that you're a boss and a pro and don't need to have that a little extra healing, you can of course switch this to the Sacrificial Fragments for that more EM and an additional cast of your E skill, which will result in more energy overall. However, I like Prototype Amber for the healing and energy it provides the team. Artifacts, of course, Veritas and Vernier. You want to get as much EM as possible on this. EM Sands, EM Goblets, and EM Circlets. If you're running low on energy and can't get enough energy recharge substats, you can also go for an energy recharge Sands here, just to make sure your burst is always up, you're always healing your team, and always infusing your ultimate, which is important because if we're looking at constellations for Sucrose, her C1 is great because it grants an additional charge to her E, which is again more energy. Her Constellation 2 gives her increased duration of the ultimates, which is of course beneficial for gathering enemies in there. And her C6 will grant a 20% elemental damage bonus to the corresponding element, in this case electro, to everyone who is using that, which will include Electro Swirls, Keqing's damage, and of course Fischl or Yai's damage as well. This makes her more like a Kazuha if you can manage to pull it off, but sometimes that ult is a little finicky and doesn't actually pull in the desired element. And Sucrose's talents are, I think I have this at 9 and 8. They don't really matter so much since her damage mostly comes from the swirl damage rather than the actual abilities damage. So as long as her level is 90, that'll be fine. Speaking of levels, everybody who's causing a reaction, so that includes Yai, Keqing, and Sucrose, should be level 90 for the aggravate effect. Lastly, looking at Yai Miko also has a decent, a balanced crit rate, crit damage of 82 and 191 here because she's rocking the Sacred Winds, and her artifact set is just 2 Piece Shumanawish, 2 Beach Gladiators because I have not farmed enough of the new EM set yet, and she's Constellation 0. And her talents are also maxed because Yai is also a character I love very much. But Yai can be replaced with Fischl in this case, and not much would really change, but the rotation with Yai in it is just so beautifully well synced in that I wouldn't replace Yai unless you just don't have her. But for more of a free-to-play friendly team, MC, Sucrose, and Fischl also works well, and if you don't want to use MC, Kale also works decently well, since you really don't need too much Dendro application when it comes to this team. Now let's take a look at team rotation. Start by placing Yai's turns around the enemies. Switch into Sucrose and group up enemies with her skill and her burst. This will activate her shared EM passive and increase elemental damage for electro units on the team through infusing of her burst. Then switch to MC to apply MC's skill and burst to grouped enemies while also dropping the EM leaf from the weapons passive. Finally, switch into Keqing, pick up the leaf, use her skill into her burst, followed by one charge attack back into another E. Then switch back into Yai and cast Yai's burst. If timed properly, Yai's turn should still be up for all 3 burst hits. If Yai doesn't have enough energy to cast her burst, then you can just reset her turrets. When dealing with boss enemies, there may not be enough energy to cast burst off cooldown. In that case, just cast the skill and move on. I've included my runs through the Spiral Abyss on 3.0. Spiral Abyss 3.0 is considered to be one of the hardest Spiral Abyss to date, but Keqing was able to deal with this just fine, even within the 1 minute 30-second time limit that is required for current meta teams. The recordings I included were Floor 12-3 Part 1, which I would consider to be the hardest part of the Spiral Abyss, and the Geo Vishap fight, because that boy has a lot of hit points, but Keqing was still able to melt it down. Though these runs were quite sloppy and I wasn't even able to implement my own proper rotations, it just goes to show how versatile this team is even in these kinds of challenging conditions, and I could only imagine what an actually good player could pull off with this team. Using Keqing's E ability to dodge around the map and ult to avoid incoming attacks just feels so satisfying. So if you enjoy a challenging playstyle that still requires some dodging but still has some survivability with heals, consider giving this team a shot.
15直15無双の風ちぎれいけ逃がさない行くわよ瞬く間に律令15直6308式はびこれいけ健康よ世の乱れを切り尽くせ陣営のごとく振動の権限律令直安全距離信頼感度超拡散形態はっはっそりゃ逃がさない瞬く間にはっはっはっディア
So thank you for sticking around and checking out this Keqing guide. I hope you learned a little something and were able to incorporate this information for your own team. Let me know down in the comments what you thought about it and what your team is like. But please be sure to try this one as well, because I feel like it'll really grow on ya. I also stream on Twitch Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights. If you're interested, link is in the bottom right of the screen. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.